Welcome everybody. I would like to start with two very short recordings of 1 minute. A Liszt concertitude, an excerpt for a 1 minute excerpt from a Liszt concertitude performed by two children, two 9-year-old boys. And let's compare them. First Magnus and then Ilan. And I would like to show you the first little boy, who's Magnus. And he plays like this. So this is the first little boy, and then I would like to show you immediately the second one. They're supposed to be quite talented boys, or I found them on the internet, obviously, and strange enough, there are so many little boys playing this piece on the internet. Do you mind if I ask you which one you liked most? So who liked the first little boy's performance more than the second one? Nobody? One person. And who liked the second one, just to be sure? Everybody else? You're not voting. Okay, you can do that. Anyway, right. Oh, there is a vast majority of you who prefer the second little boy's performance for some reason. And I'd like to add some notes about it, why you choose the second performance, or why you didn't choose the first one. Please share it with me. Just, you can say whatever you like. How do you approach the difference between the two performances? Yes?
Well, I could see that the second one, he was using his hand muscles very differently.
Hand muscles?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was more active in the short hand muscles, in his hand muscles. And it was more emotional. So
right.
More emotionally engaged.
Yes.
It was more tempo, it was flowing better.
Yes, absolutely. Something else maybe to add? Yes.
I feel more secure.
More secure? The second one? Oh, I very much like what you say also, yes. Maybe something else to add? One?
First of all, it's more technical, more like
yes.
Work, push,
yes.
Work,
yes. Whereas yes. I can't but agree with you.
Yeah.
With you all.
And just phrasing.
Oh, the phrasing, yeah.
The opening, I felt a check in the second one.
Yes, much more than the first performance. Yeah, absolutely. So interesting what you said, because so, in order to, how can we grasp the difference? You highlighted a very interesting thing, but muscle use, hand muscle use, which is, wow, so it's a new, I have never heard of that, by the way. On the other hand, you also highlighted the emotionally to the second performance, phrasing, and yes, and also security. So these are different things, things on different levels. For example, if we talk about tempo change, tempo differences, microtiming, articulation, or dynamic differences, we are at a structural level of the description. So basically, we are at the level of performance cues or performance features. However, we can give a cognitive level description too, and security or emotionality, that's already at a cognitive level. So, which is basically about what sort of mental computation produces the differences in performance cues. And at the cognitive level of the description, which is, I think, the most interesting when we talk about performance, is the following questions are of vital interest. So what part does the performer's mind, mental computation, mental processing, play in achieving expressiveness? What does the performer focus on in order to produce the differences in performance cues? After all, can we describe the cognitive rules for performance expressiveness? And I would like to give a tentative answer to this question now. Some may claim that the second little boy might have understood the piece better than the first one, because it was more emotional, more phrased, etc. By the way, I thought that some of you might say this. I might add or introduce the term understanding to this discourse. But in any case, when we talk about understanding, both in language and in music, it's very important to note, to remember that understanding can never consist of merely reproducing formal features of stimuli. Because a radio, a smartphone, a starling, or some other birds are absolutely able to reproduce musical excerpts much better than some of our students at some solfège exams. But nobody would claim that a radio or a computer, a smartphone, or a starling would understand. Mozart had a starling, by the way. Did you know that? Anyway, and Haydn had a great parrot who were able to reproduce wonderful musical excerpts by the authors. Anyway, so but nobody would claim they understand what they're doing. They just reproduce things because understanding is something is a generative faculty basically, whereas they are not able to form representation. I mean, we don't have any evidence that birds or computers form representations based on felt experiences related to the music, or that what they do is based on an empathic detection of feelings and emotions connected to what we may call the content or meaning of music. So they are just able to, just on a kind of a structural level, as I told you, reproduce the formal components of musical processes. From a performer's point of view, understanding has a vital aspect, because both everyday evidence, so pedagogical evidence, and research evidence suggests that expressiveness in performance, and also individuality, by the way, is linked to how actively a performer thinks of, and especially feels during performing, what the piece means to them, or what the improvisation means to them. So there is a growing body of evidence you can about this, and this fact, which is, by the way, which has always been, I think, a commonplace to the best teachers, the best music teachers. If we approached the question of understanding music, or the question of expressiveness from the point of view of music psychology, which deals with the capacity for music. I would claim that the essence for the capacity of music, or for the capacity for music, is not a mere reproduction, not a mere ability or capacity to reproduce musical stimuli, which is measured by most of the tests, most of the music aptitude tests, which I honestly and truly and deeply hate. Because understanding music relies in fact on the listener's or the performer's ability to follow the musical process in real time through subjectively linking emotions and maybe thoughts and feelings to the elements of the musical process. Thus, understanding is based on feeling and not mere knowledge. And what is of vital importance to underline here is that feeling musical processes, for example, feeling the form of a piece of music, or feeling the length of the next phrase, or that of the past phrase you just played, or feeling or associating feelings with a harmonic change, or associating feelings with the process you are with the process while you are navigating the tonal structure of a piece, which was so beautifully illustrated by Elaine's model an hour ago. So it is always connected with feelings, and connecting, for example, a chord, the color or whatever of a chord, with subjective feelings, or a change of a chord with subjective feelings, can be done even without having access to naming that chord. So I can have a very deep feeling of a beautiful chord without being able to name it, really. Whereas in academia or in pedagogy, we always teach the naming thing instead of the feeling thing. And the naming thing, I mean, most of you are performers. I guess that nobody came up to performance to ask you whether you, what was that chord? Could you name that chord? The beautiful chord you played there. But what I remember is that very, very beautiful suspension Elaine played in that excerpt of the Strauss burlesque. So beautifully. This is what I remember, and not necessarily the quality of that thing. Anyway, so the essence of the capacity for music is feeling in real time, indeed. How can we define meaning in music? And this is, seems to be patently simple here, but believe me, this is a summary of meters of literature into music aesthetics and music psychology. So it's a kind of a condensed summary of that. So meaning can be defined as the sum of the thoughts and feelings the listener associates with a musical process by virtue of understanding it. It's slightly circular, that's right, but anyway, so understanding is the cognitive formation of representation and the representation of musical meanings, which requires feeling and which is obviously always subjective. This is basically how mostly a meaning is defined in natural language by psychologists, not linguists, not always linguists. And based on all this I've been talking about, I have recently delineated two systems of musical expressiveness. I would call the what and the how system. The what system is what we have been talking about, the subjective formation of meaning. So it's basically if you talk about the expressiveness, the emotionality of the performance, we have to talk about what basically what it means to the performer in question, and that's the what question. What why it's a system I will talk to you about in a moment. However, it is even more interesting to talk about how the representation of meaning happens in real time while performing, in the act of performance. And that's the how system of expressiveness. So basically, how do you focus the musical meanings in real time? Regarding the what system, so what can be defined as the meaning of a piece of music or an improvisation. So how can we define categories of musical content? If you want to provide a theoretical framework on this, we have to observe a few criteria. For parsimonious and nice theoretical framework. For example, the layers of meaning or the categories of musical meaning should have different origins. They should display different performance cue patterns with different characteristics. They should have different effects on your perception and should be related ideally to neurologically different processing. So, and based on, taking in mind these criteria, I have delineated earlier the following categories of what we may call the content or the meaning of a musical process. In music, there are movement patterns, which we usually call gestures in everyday, so in a pedagogical practice. So we are, of course, obviously not talking about the movements of the performer here, but there is something in the music which seems to kind of move. Of course, it does not move anywhere, but there are movement patterns, musical processes. A melody or a piece of music or a part of a piece of music ideally is able to very promptly express. There are then characters by which I mean more static states of emotions or expressions of emotions. For example, you can have for one piece of Bach, you have for one movement, Bach movement, you have basically one character throughout the piece. However, in Beethoven and Mozart, characters change every 2 or 4 bars. And they are very often based on gestures, but they are not similar. You feel probably immediately the difference between what. The movement pattern is a short-lived thing. It's just like I don't know. This is an obvious movement pattern. Obviously, something like that. But a character can be something like, I don't know, nostalgic. There is such a huge piece of research, such a huge amount of research, about this. The direct expression of emotions in music. Then there is what we may call the narrative structure of a piece of music, which is basically how the characters and the gestures, mostly how the characters and the gestures follow each other in a piece of music in order to create a whole, a story-like integrity. And then there is a tonal structure, which is a kind of, you might think at first glance, a tonal structure is something, is a formal thing. It's not something which is semantic. However, just like in poetry, the form of a piece of music is always linked to emotions. We feel the form while navigating in a piece of music. Normally, we feel, as performers, if you are a really expressive performer, you need to be able to feel at what point of the musical process you are right now. I hope if you are performers, it does make sense to you. when I play an 8-bar period in a piece of, I don't know, whatever Mozart, or and I'm on the second beat of the 6th bar. I mean, I have a specific feeling related to this thing. So this is how a performer feels structure, basically, or I feel before attacking the phrase how long the next phrase will be, and so on. And then, that's the metrical and the grouping structure, and the tonal structure. We feel the tonal structure also because obviously we feel how at a given moment how far we are from the tonal center, and so on. We have such feelings, and these are the feelings which basically contribute to the expressiveness of a performance. So without such feelings, your performance tends to be perceived by listeners as much less expressive than without it. So basically, expressiveness in performance goes like this. The performer expresses gestures, characters, the narrative or dramatic structure, the tonal structure, and the temporal structure by feeling elements of this structure continuously in real time. That is why they succeed in the musical flow. For the pedagogy, this is just a short note that there are basically two consequences for pedagogy of all of what we have been talking about so far. Teaching musical understanding and teaching basically expressiveness in music performance rely on two pillars. So one is you need to be able to teach, to help the student to form their own musical meanings, which they could feel as deeply as possible, and then give them tools how to feel them at the right moment when they perform, so that they would not be distracted by problematic focus on things like instrumental technique. So the more you focus on instrumental technique, on fingering, or your hand position, or the muscles while performing, and so on, the more you focus on these things, the less expressive your performance tends to be perceived by the listener. By the listeners, there is the few references I gave to you a few slides earlier. References by Adina Mornell, my colleague Adina Mornell, Eitan Gorberson, for example. So they have done wonderful research into this a couple of years ago. So instrumental technique, that's one among the things which are quite problematic if we focus on while performing. Articulation does the same. So if you are focusing just on whether it's tenuto or staccato, whatever, that it won't really produce expressiveness. Just like if you focus on playing beautifully, that's a dead end. Or playing evenly, that's a dead end, because the listener will just feel that there is something else happening here than producing expressiveness. Or if you focus on your own thoughts on yourself, for example, your will to play beautifully or well or whatever, or whatever else in the music, such as the behavior of the public, obviously, then your performance will tend to be perceived less expressive than if you focus on the subjective meaning of what subjectively the current thing in the musical process means to you. So there are, just to wrap up with the pedagogical applications for this, for what we have been arguing so far, is that whereas what I call structuralist pedagogy focuses on how the end result should sound, it's like, I mean, most of what we see in music classes is structuralist pedagogy. So the teacher listens to a performance and says that, oh, you have to slow down there, speed up there, it's more forte, give more rest there, and blah, blah, blah. So this is on the structural level. It's fine, so there is no problem with this. However, it's, if this is coupled with what I call cognitive pedagogy, so which is basically about how you should be able to focus, how you should focus, or how you could focus on what we called so far the musical meaning while performance, then that will result in a really very efficient training, efficient performance training, which leads to what psychologists call external focus. External focus means that you are not focusing on the instrument, on your movements, so in technical matters, but you're focusing on something which you subjectively relate to the music. That is the meaning of music in question. But now comes the most interesting part, towards the end of my presentation here, is that the how system. So how do you do this? How do you focus on gestures, on characters, on the tonal and the temporal process while performing? You can get insights from sports psychology about this, because there has been very interesting research into the attentional control in sports over the past 30 years already. And may I just immediately share with you one of the most thrilling results of this. You probably know Cristiano Ronaldo.
Mental ability contributes to his performance. The scientists are going to start by testing Ronaldo's spatial awareness. They're fitting him with these state-of-the-art eye trackers that will reveal exactly what he looks at when he plays.
Okay, last one.
They are operated by equipment specialist John Ward.
And up to the top. Perfect. That's good.
And running this test is sports psychologist Zoe Wimshurst.
With Ronaldo, he's going to be using all of his senses pretty much while he's playing. Probably around between 80 and 90% of the information that he's taking in will be coming through his eyes.
During this test, Ronaldo is going to try to stop Andy taking possession of the ball, and the technology will reveal how he does it.
So John, the eye tracker, explain to us exactly how this works.
Okay, so you're both wearing equipment where we have a camera looking at the eye, and it uses infrared light to reflect from the eye. This picks up an image, and we have a camera at the front here that looks at what you're seeing, so yourself and Cristiano. The software will then match those two together. We'll see exactly what you guys are looking at.
Fantastic, let's do this thing. Okay, let's see if you can keep that ball 5 seconds away from me. Play. That's good 5 seconds, that's a good 5 seconds. That is quality.
There's no doubt that Ronaldo's feet are fast and effective, but what part does his mind play in this ability? The eye trackers show intriguing results. On the replay, the little red dot shows exactly what Ronaldo's looking at.
You'd expect a lot of players to be focused on the ball the whole time. With Ronaldo, he did look at the ball a fair amount of time, but he was much more looking around, looking at the defender and taking in the information from his body, and also scanning for the spaces beyond the defender.
Andy, on the other hand, can't afford to take his eyes off the ball because he doesn't have quite the same ability to predict where the ball is going.
To actually see what's going on, we need to slow it down to 1/3 of actual speed.
Yeah.
That's how fast Cristiano is, so you didn't have much of a chance, I'm afraid.
Thanks.
In 8 seconds, he pulled 13 moves on you. Okay, and we're not just talking kicks of the ball, we're talking step overs, spins. Oh, it was beautiful. So you can see here on the gaze data, you can see he's concentrating on the ball. But what you'll see, and the interesting thing, is when he wants to go past you and look at how you're moving, he's predicting where you're sort of going to be. He's looking for movement in the hips to sort of plan his next move.
So he looks at the ball, then he looks at where I move, and then he executes his trick.
You see it comes in, looks at your foot, looks to the other one, up to the hip. Really accurate, precise, sharp movements. And then when we look to watching you, you're mostly trying to follow the ball, which means you're only ever going to be able to react to where the ball is moving rather than anticipate in advance anything that he's going to do. So you're always going to be that one step behind.
But this is all about music. So isn't it just like a good performer, what a really outstanding performer does is really very similar. There's a kind of there's a very similar navigating imagery process going on in navigating strategies, attentional strategies, underlying performance expressiveness. And for this, I mean, I would have one more video, but we don't have time. Sorry, I was running out of time. So basically, this navigating activity in music is what I think opens the way to full concentration and feeling in real time, feeling the contents of music. I mean, the layers, the various layers of music, I mean, in real time, through mentally positioning into the various layers of musical content. And how do you do this? You can just position, I mean, empathically position into the character of the piece, but it's much more intricate if we talk about how you focus on, or how you mentally position into the structure of music. And how do you do this? It's very similar to Ronaldo's navigating. I mean, navigating gaze. He's navigating the space, and here we are navigating the kind of musical space, the tonal space, and also the temporal space in music. By, for example, at certain moments, before attacking a phrase, for example, you form a clear cognitive map of the forthcoming structure unit. So you feel in advance the length of the structure unit. This is what is linked to expressiveness. To perceived expressiveness in music. If you don't do that, your performance will tend to be perceived by listeners as less expressive. Then you have what we saw at Ronaldo's, by Ronaldo, this past focus, basically, which is you form a mental image of the preceding musical units to which the subsequent ones will be then measured. And then there are moments when you may just fully enjoy the present sounding moment. And this might be a bit different from what Ronaldo does, because for sports it may not be so important. But this is how it works. So, and this is how you get into a flow state of consciousness very quickly. So this kind of turnaround of this process makes or creates something which Csikszentmihalyi defined as flow. You anticipate what to come next by anticipating temporal length, for example. Then, as a certain moment, you just enjoy the present moment. And these are different moments. It's very important to note they don't happen in the same moment. And then there are moments of active reflection, where you are kind of assessing whether it was as long as you projected, you played as long as projected the phrasing question. And basically, just the last remark to the end. So how would you put this theory into practice? I developed a new attention training for musicians, which is called, which I call practice methodology. Maybe it's a bit dull, but anyway, which was developed during the past decade, over the past decade in Hungary, at the Liszt Academy of Budapest and another university I also work. By the way, that's the university from which the new Nobel Prize winner in chemistry comes. You know, the lady with the COVID lady. So she's from the University of Szeged, where I'm from. And so this focuses this theory on mastering some of the most essential musical attentional skills, and it has already been implemented in curricula, into the curricula of the Liszt Academy and other universities in Hungary. And implementation in into secondary level curricula and primary level curricula is kind of in progress. So it aims at mastering the three essential attentional skills: anticipation, reflection, and present moment focus of the musical imagery process, through leading the student through a series of specifically designed musical exercises, and it features systematic exercises of visualization and shaping, and usually I base them on metaphors of vision and visual metaphors and metaphors of movement. For example, anticipation can be triggered through exercises of visual spatial imagery, through gestural metaphors. Reflection can be triggered through further exercises of directed musical imagery and gaze guiding. That's very fun for the students, especially for children. And then the present moment focus, or what we may call mindfulness, can be wonderfully and very efficiently triggered by focusing on a tangible quality of the sound, such as the intonation or timbre. So if someone's performance is just superficial, you just tell the student in question that to pick up a few notes from the middle of the phrase and try to praise or hum them, or so, or just please have the intonation or find the piano is well tuned in that note here, and the student will immediately, the expressiveness of the performance will immediately be boosted. Without losing the meter, without losing the tempo. And what is really very interesting here is that typical exercises of this methodology, of this set of methods, aim at not only deepening musical focus and expressiveness, but also metrical, rhythmic skill development. And I love to work with percussionists who love to use metronome, and I love to non-use metronome for this, which results in an extremely efficient training, yielding secure and comfortable navigation of the musical process, and it also fosters creativity actually in performance and solves all kinds of technical problems. And thank you very much for your attention, because I think we are at the end of this thing. Basically, this enables the musician to let go in the moment, to get and stay emotionally deeply engaged with the music, to deal with mistakes in real time while performing. Also, that's very interesting, and it fosters kind of mental readiness, it boosts the it's kind of musical intelligence, I would say, of the performer. And finally, the performer will feel secure in the musical process after this, and becomes able to musically react to mistakes while performing. Why did I call this a practice methodology? It's because it helps not only with expressiveness, but also with how to be more effective, how to plan, not only about how to be more present, but also to how to practice with and without an instrument. If you have more questions, I'm here for you all the time, and you can always contact me at this address. Thanks very, very much for your attention.
While we're handing it over to Manus, just any quick questions. So we can go ahead and feel free to come up. Any quick questions for László?
Yes, please.
Hi, thank you so much, László, for your presentation.
Thanks for your attention.
Your questions, I'm a fan of my work. My question is to do with the slippage between the performer's feeling and the listener's or the responder's feeling. I recently read Stephen Huff's latest book, and one thing that I found really interesting was that he said that, sometimes the fact that the performer themselves is feeling a particular way does not necessarily mean that the audience will feel that way. And
Correct.
his theory of teaching is that the teaching should focus more on what we do to make the audience feel a certain way, rather than necessarily us feeling in that way. I was just interested if you have any response to that, if that's something that has played into this, and do you also see that as kind of something that we need to negotiate? With how we feel and how they feel.
Yes, I think it's a vital question, and I may not really concur with this author you just mentioned. Does he have evidence on this, of this?
Okay, well,
is it an empirical fact? He is.
Yeah. He's a pianist. Yeah, he's a
Right.
It's
I mean, my answer normally is that it depends on the audience members' empathic, EQ. Emotional quotient. So empathic ability, whether they really are able to feel in concordance with the performer. I would go for this answer quickly.
So it's very much to do with the audience.
Audiences, the skills of the audience. Yeah, I mean the empathic skills of the audience member. Yes.
So you reckon that, assuming that the performer is at a decent standard, if the performer truly and sincerely feels something when they're playing with the audience, if the audience is decent, will also catch it.
Yeah, I mean they catch it. It's like emotional contagion, as we say, psychology. Yeah. That's emotional contagion. That's a term.